caught in the crossfire. It's caught in the
What's up, guys? Lance the Obscure Movie Guy coming to you once again with another fun-filled, fact-filled video that you probably won't care about, but we're going to do it anyways, trying to change the world one post at a time. Today's video is done in partnership with Indie Horror Junkie, so be sure to go to IndieHorrorJunkie.com to check out all of their offerings. The latest issue of the Indie Horror Junkie magazine is getting ready to drop on July 13th, so be sure to go order yours today. $5 for a downloadable PDF, $20 for a printable copy shipped straight to your door. Every other Wednesday night, they have the Indie Horror Junkie podcast where they talk to different movie directors, actors. So always cool things to talk about. New movies to go over, new stories to tell. And then, of course, there will be the Indie Horror Junkie Film Festival held at MegaCon in 2027. More information on that as we get closer. So in the meantime, let's jump into today's video about a witch in the woods, reminiscent of other films about witches in woods. Today we're talking about The Texas Witch.
Let's pitch a tent.
Do y'all know about the witch that haunts these woods?
Her name was Emily. Every guy in town wanted to marry her. She had miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage. In her desperation, she turned towards witchcraft.
There is no such thing as a witch haunting this forest or any forest.
We're all gonna die out here, aren't we? She's gonna kill us.
What do you want from us?
The Texas Witch was written by Andrew Evans and Gianna Lutz, directed by Anthony Gutierrez, and tells the story of Piper in search of her brother who went missing in some woods outside of a Texas town, with some legends of a witch who resides in said woods. Now, we do get a pretty decent, albeit pretty typical horror setup in your opening sequence about this witch and a couple that essentially go missing in these woods. We then jump into kind of the main plot of which Piper trying to find her brother in these woods. They have a bit of an argument at their house. He kind of goes off with his girlfriend into these woods for kind of like a camping trip, and essentially doesn't come back. Piper tries to go to the local authorities, sheriff and a deputy, which she does have a little bit of history with because it is a small Texas town. But from there, it's very much a very typical kind of, Piper's in search of her brother. Sheriff's kind of like, he's fine, former military, he's a big guy. He can take care of himself. And they don't really want to dive into this whole looking for him. It hasn't been long enough to, report of missing persons. But there's also some apprehension there because they kind of do know a little bit about the history of the woods in which he went missing. So they're kind of, it's a little bit of back and forth between the characters. And Piper essentially takes it upon herself to go with a group of her friends in search of her brother in the woods, since the sheriff and the deputies don't necessarily want to help. And is basically your setup and your plot of this film. Now, from a fundamental standpoint, the cinematography and the videography is actually pretty good in this film, and there's no audio issues. It is shot a lot in the woods, so the scenery actually helps the videography a little bit because it is a very beautiful section of woods that they were filming in for the most part of this film. And I think from an acting standpoint, I think the actors did pretty good using what they were given as far as the script. There's some very good screen chemistry. There's some pretty good camaraderie between the characters. And even the dramatic parts, Piper and her brother, some of that tension came through pretty well on screen. So from an acting standpoint, I think most parties, actually just about all parties involved as far as the acting goes, did a pretty reputable job. Now, I will say after that opening sequence and the few scenes thereafter with Piper and the sheriff's department, there's a bit of a lull in the story. And there's a lot of they try to do a lot of build up for this witch, and it's not until around like the 38-minute mark that we actually start getting a little background information on this witch in the woods, who she might be, why she's there, what may have happened to her, what happens to the people that go missing in these woods. But I mean, that's a good chunk. You're well into the film at that point before you get any of this background information. And eventually, we do find that Piper does come across some clues into what may or may not have happened to her brother. She kind of finds his cell phone. There's some recordings on there, some old video, voicemail, stuff like that to try and put the pieces together for what's really happening with these characters. And I will say, ironically enough, if you watch this film all the way through, it is going to feel very familiar. Because basically what you have is large in part, not entirely, but large in part, I feel like this is a cinematic version of the Blair Witch. So basically, instead of the Blair Witch being found footage, if you shot it cinematically, you would come up with the Texas Witch. The story feels kind of familiar. Some of the things and story arcs with the characters kind of seem a little similar, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does lack a little bit of originality because that's really how it came across. Aside from the real main plot point of like Piper trying to find her brother, a lot of the film unfortunately feels very reminiscent of the Blair Witch. And like I said, if you shot Blair Witch cinematically, you'd basically have the Texas Witch. Another thing that this film is lacking is realistically the antagonist. You don't really get to see a whole lot of the witch. There's very much a cat and mouse game between the people in the woods and being pursued by essentially the witch, but you don't really get to see a whole lot as far as the witch herself or doing a whole lot of things to these people. It's very much cat and mouse. Some of the things that happen to these people is because of their own stupidity. There are some few typical horror tropes, somebody running off, trying to, run off from the group. Somebody might trip, they might fall, they might get stabbed by a branch. So, I mean, there is some typical horror tropes in there that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it didn't add a whole lot to the storyline. And you're lacking the witch primarily. You hear a lot about this witch and you hear about the legends, but from a visual standpoint and really what she's bringing to the plot, you don't really get a whole lot of that actual witch itself. So while I did find the story not necessarily original and a bit lacking in the storytelling itself, you do have a good foundation for something that could be expanded upon if they wanted to try and continue along with this franchise or try and make another witch film kind of surrounding that Texas witch character. You also have some pretty decent acting throughout the course of this film. Like I said earlier, the camaraderie and the screen chemistry comes across pretty well. It stars Gianna Lutz. And you also have an appearance by Neil McCoy, which is kind of cool. So you get country superstar, albeit in his golden years, but you do get an appearance by country superstar Neil McCoy as the sheriff. So I thought that was kind of cool. So there's a good foundation laid out to maybe do a sequel and maybe expand upon some of the lore and maybe show a little bit more of the witch and how she goes about, doing these things in the woods and what she's actually doing to some of these people. And like I said earlier, fundamentally, it's pretty sound. The videography and the cinematography is pretty good. The editing is pretty good. The few special effects that they do use were pretty solid, and the acting is fairly decent. Where it lacks, unfortunately, is the story in and of itself, and it is very reminiscent of Blair Witch. And realistically, I wasn't a huge fan of Blair Witch when it came out either, and still am not. But Texas Witch is available on streaming platforms. You can definitely go check it out on Tubi. Stream it, watch it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Has anybody seen the Texas Witch? If you do watch it, go back and watch my review and tell me what you thought. So like, subscribe, and comment to my YouTube channel. Check me out on Facebook and Instagram. I'll see everybody in the next video.